You have to listen to this story quietly, because we're going to listen a story together. So stay with me until the end. Let's listen to this story together. My name is Bella. If you had asked me 2 years ago what my life would look like, would have painted a picture of a quiet, ordinary girl living with her family, finishing school, and maybe dreaming of college. But things didn't turn out that way. Life, as I learned, rarely follows the simple map we try to draw for it. I used to live with my father. My mother had left us when I was young, so it was just the two of us in that big, creaking house. My father was strict, too strict. He wasn't cruel exactly, but he believed that control meant love. Every part of my life had to be supervised. What I wore, where I went, who I spoke to, even what books I read. At first, I tried to obey. I thought maybe if I stayed quiet enough, if I followed his rules, he would trust me more. But no matter how much I tried, the walls around me only grew tighter. Our arguments started small, about curfews, about friends, about my desire to have some independence. But as I got older, the fights grew louder. He wanted me to live his idea of a perfect life, and I wanted to breathe. The breaking point came one rainy night, after he tore up a letter from a college I had applied to without his permission. I remember screaming at him, my voice shaking, "You don't own me." For a moment, I saw shock in his eyes, but then his anger drowned it out. That night, I packed a small bag and ran away. I had nowhere to go. The rain soaked through my jacket as I walked the empty streets, my tears mixing with the storm. I felt terrified and free at the same time. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house another day. For days I wandered, sleeping on benches, eating cheap food from convenience stores, until I stumbled into a small, family-owned restaurant. It was nothing fancy, just a narrow place with old red booths, squeaky fans, and the smell of fried food in the air. I asked the owner, a woman named Marcia, if she had any work. She looked at me for a long time, her sharp eyes scanning my tired face, my messy hair, my trembling hands. Then she said, "You can start tomorrow. Don't make me regret it." And so began my new life as a waitress. The restaurant became my shelter, though it wasn't easy. I worked long hours, sometimes 12 or 14 a day. I cleaned tables, carried trays heavier than I thought I could manage, scrubbed greasy pans until my hands cracked. Customers weren't always kind. Some complained endlessly, some snapped their fingers at me like I was invisible, and a few made comments that left me shaken. But I learned to smile through it, to grit my teeth and keep moving. The hardest part, though, wasn't the physical exhaustion. It was the loneliness. At night, after the last table had been cleared and the lights dimmed, I would walk back to the small room Marcia let me rent above the restaurant. Lying in the silence, I thought about my father. Did he miss me? Was he angry? Did he even care that I was gone? Those questions haunted me, but I pushed them down, because if I thought too long, I might lose the courage to keep going. Still, the restaurant taught me things I never would have learned at home. I met people, strangers with their own stories. There was Joe, the grumpy cook who barked orders but secretly saved me extra meals when he thought I looked too thin. There was Carla, another waitress who taught me how to balance 3 plates on one arm and how to laugh even when customers were rude. And there were the regulars, like Mr. Thompson, who always tipped too much because he said he liked the way I reminded him of his daughter. But not every face in that restaurant was kind. There was a group of young men who often came in late at night, loud and rowdy, their laughter sharp as broken glass. At first, I thought they were harmless, just drunk and careless. But over time, their words grew meaner, their stares heavier. One night, when I was clearing their table, one of them grabbed my wrist and wouldn't let go. My heart raced, my mind screaming for help, but before I could react, Joe stormed out from the kitchen and shoved the man back with a force I didn't think his old arms still had. "Get out," Joe growled, and they did, but not without throwing curses behind them. That night, I sat in the back room shaking, realizing just how vulnerable I really was. I was grateful to Joe, but I also knew this life was dangerous in ways I hadn't imagined. Yet despite the struggles, a strange pride began to grow inside me. Every dollar I earned, every shift I survived, every night I went to bed knowing I had made it on my own, it felt like proof that I was stronger than I thought. I was no longer the quiet, obedient girl in my father's house. I was Bella, a girl who could stand on her own 2 feet. Still, I couldn't escape the shadow of my past. Sometimes, in the middle of serving a table, would hear a father call gently to his daughter, and my chest would ache. Sometimes I dreamed of walking back home, of my father opening the door with tears in his eyes, begging me to forgive him. But when morning came, reality returned, and I knew that day was still far away. My story in that restaurant stretched on, filled with trials and lessons, heartbreak and resilience. I didn't know what the future held for me, whether I would ever reconcile with my father, whether I would build something bigger than that little rented room, but I knew one thing for certain: running away was the hardest choice I ever made, and working in that restaurant was the fire that forged me into someone stronger. And this was only the beginning. And by now I had gotten used to the rhythm of my life in the restaurant, the endless clatter of dishes, the smell of frying oil that clung to my clothes, the sore feet after every shift. It wasn't glamorous, but it was survival, and survival had become my definition of success. But life has a way of surprising you, even when you think you've seen the worst it has to offer. It all started on a Wednesday afternoon. The lunch rush was fading, and I was wiping down tables when the door chimed and a man walked in. He wasn't loud like the usual crowd of college kids or construction workers who came in hungry. He walked slowly, as if he was carrying some kind of weight, but his eyes, calm and steady, swept the room before settling on a corner booth. I went over, pad in hand, giving him the same tired smile I gave everyone else. "Hi, welcome to Marcia's. Can I get you something to drink?" He looked up at me and smiled, softly, kindly, not like the men who tried too hard. "Just coffee, please. Black." His voice was warm, low, almost comforting. His name, as I would learn later, was Adam. At first, he was just another customer. He came in almost every afternoon, always sitting at the same booth, ordering coffee and sometimes pie. But unlike others, he never made me feel small. He didn't stare too long, didn't make snide comments. He asked about my day, not in that fake, polite way people sometimes do, but as if he genuinely cared about the answer. And me? At first, I kept my guard up. Too many times, I had seen people's kindness turn into something else, something demanding. But Adam was patient. He never pushed, never pried. Slowly, little by little, I found myself telling him things, small pieces of my life. About how I ended up working here, about how hard it was living above the restaurant, about the dreams I used to have before everything fell apart. He listened. That was the most shocking part. He actually listened. One evening, after a brutal double shift, I walked outside to find the streets pouring with rain. My jacket was thin, my umbrella broken weeks ago. I stood there, exhausted, staring at the storm like it was just another battle I had to face. Then Adam appeared, holding out his umbrella. "You'll catch your death out here," he said gently. I wanted to argue, to say I didn't need help, but the truth was I did. And so, for the first time in a long while, I let someone walk beside me. Over the weeks, his presence became a kind of light in the dull routine of my life. Some nights, when the restaurant closed, we'd sit in that corner booth together, sharing leftovers, talking until the neon signs outside flickered off. He told me about his life too, how he had moved to town for work, how he'd lost people he loved, how he was searching for something more than just paychecks and long commutes. It wasn't love at first sight, not for me, not after everything I'd been through. But it was something gentler, something steadier. It was trust being built, brick by brick. Yet, even as Adam and I grew closer, the shadows of my past never fully left me. There were nights I woke up sweating, hearing my father's angry voice echoing in my dreams.